kicked out of the gym for recording footage in there. And now it's time to find an alternative gym.
Find an alternative gym.
What's up, dudes and girls? We are here at a new gym location, and they've let us shoot here entirely just to do our own thing, so we're not gonna get in any trouble. So we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna do a shoulder workout. Now, one of the things you wanna do whenever you're developing your shoulders is, almost with any muscle, is make sure they're warmed up, make sure they're mobile, ready to go for a hard workout. And we're gonna do some shoulder mobility, start off this workout, just do some pass-throughs, some wall sides, maybe some Bradford presses, things of that nature, and then go on some heavy pressing to develop these delts, baby. So let's get started. So as you can tell, these pass-throughs, taking a pretty wide grip and just using a band right now. And as you go through, you can actually tighten your grip a little bit, so that way it makes it a little bit more difficult and kind of stress the joint a little bit more to help with the mobility. And what you can also do is when you raise it up, elevate your shoulders, so that way it's gonna become a little bit easier that way to pass through. They're also called shoulder dislocates. That's kind of a scarier name, so I kind of like pass-throughs a little bit more. About 2 sets, 15 reps or so, nothing too crazy, but now that we got the pass-throughs done, we're gonna hit some wall slides. Now the key with these ones here is make sure your forearm, your arms are staying in contact with the wall at all times. Your back is flat, trying not to have too much arch in it. And take it nice and slow. You can tell, starting in a wide position, and then pulling those elbows down, kind of almost like you're doing a pull-up, like kind of down to that back pocket area. You're gonna feel the contraction in the traps, a little bit in the rotator cuffs, kind of all those like kind of posterior muscles back there. It's really gonna help activate that, get them warmed up. So it's really basically all the muscles that are gonna stabilize that shoulder joint. So whenever you go heavy with any kind of pressing motion, your shoulders are gonna be ready for it and activated. If you just go right into some heavy pressing, unfortunately, you know, sometimes you can pull something or you can tweak something or God forbid, break something. But you know, this is why these kind of mobility and drill exercises are so important, because it's really just injury prevention. So you talk to any kind of athlete and they're gonna talk about injury prevention, because these kind of movements are gonna make sure that you're healthy, especially in the shoulder joint, since it is a muscle, or excuse me, a joint that does work in a 360-degree motion. There's a lot of angles that are gonna pull on it, and a lot of muscles that kind of connect into that shoulder joint there that can pull it in different ways. So you always wanna keep it mobile, but also have muscular balance in there, and that's what we're gonna focus on in this workout. So I think now we're gonna do one more set of this, and we're gonna move on to some light weights, and then get into heavy pressing. I was like trying to include a warm-up set to start off the exercise. Do 1 to 2 warm-up sets, higher reps, lower weight, and then go right into the working sets after that. We're gonna stick within around 3 to 4 sets, depending on the exercise. Usually compound exercise, you're gonna go higher on the sets, because the volume's gonna be a bit higher, just because since it's a larger movement, there's a lot more muscles involved. Your body can take it, but then if you go into the isolation movements where you're really trying to isolate a certain muscle group, like say lateral raises or front raises, so on, keep it a little bit lighter, but also you're gonna decrease the volume slightly, just because you're putting a lot of stress on more of that single muscle group. So now that we've got the warm-up sets done, we'll move on a little bit heavier and get 4 sets. So you can see we're doing a seated press. Now seated is gonna take the legs out of the equation, a little bit more of the core out of the equation. So if you do a standing press, the core is gonna have to be activated to stabilize you throughout that motion. If you do it seated, all of a sudden it's really all in those delts. Primarily it's working the anterior delt, which is the front portion, the initial press. As you kind of slightly rotate the shoulders, excuse me, the elbows out, we hit a little bit of the lateral and also the posterior, the back there, to help with stabilization. But the hard thing about is balancing the muscle groups is the anterior deltoid is usually worked the most. You do a lot of pressing motions, curls, things of that nature. So you really want to try to make sure that you're including all these exercises, different exercises throughout the workout, to create that balance, so that way there's no pulling. You know, as you kind of tend to work your anterior portion here, you're gonna pull the shoulders forward, then you're gonna have that bad posture. So you really want to maintain that strength in the posterior delt, and of course you get the lateral head, just for a little bit of that size and the width there. So that's what we're gonna be hitting during this workout. It's really just all 3 heads of the delt and kind of going over the motions of it and the benefits. So we got 2 more sets on the press, and we're gonna be moving on to the other heads of the deltoid. maybe doing kind of like a pressing motion. When you get that top position, try to elevate the traps there. It's gonna get a little extra contraction through there, get the traps involved. Any kind of like extra movement you can do is gonna slightly help. So you can tell, kind of taking it a little bit close in the beginning, as you're pressing up, the elbows are slightly rotating out. As you hit that top position, you're gonna elevate, and it's not only gonna stabilize the shoulder joint, it's also gonna activate those traps, give you more benefit in the lift. So we just got done with the 4th set. Now we're gonna move on to the next exercise. We got the face pulls next. This is another compound movement. But you try to remember, you try to include a decent amount of compound movements whenever you're doing any kind of muscle group. Specifically, if you're doing kind of a larger muscle group, let's say shoulders, back, chest, legs, things of that nature. If you're doing too many isolations, you might not get the full benefit of the workout. So we're hitting another compound movement, which is gonna be the face pulls on the cable machine here. And 2 things you gotta remember on this one. You're gonna start out in a little bit more of a stretched position, so your shoulders are rolled forward, they're pulled forward a little bit, and as you pull that way, you're gonna be bending in the elbows and also retracting in the shoulders. So you're not only getting a little pull in the biceps, but you're really squeezing back with the traps. You're getting a full contraction as you pull at face level to get that posterior delt. So it's that rear deltoid here. And so it's a really beneficial exercise to hit that kind of posterior part of the shoulders like we were saying before, to really help strengthen that, give it some size, and go on from there. So we got the compounds out of the way. Now time to move on to some isolation work, and we're gonna be doing some unilateral work for the first one, which is gonna be a lateral raise with the dumbbells, and then it's gonna be supersetted. Superset is going from one exercise immediately to the next with no rest in between, and we're gonna superset it with the shoulder extensions. Now this is kind of an exercise maybe not a lot of people are familiar with. Now shoulder extension, the motion is taking the shoulder joint from this area back. So immediately you'll probably think to yourself, well, it's working the posterior deltoid, and you're right about that. It's really focusing on that posterior deltoid. It's working a little bit of the latissimus dorsi and also the teres major as well. So we're just gonna be going one from another. And the unilateral work is working one side independent from the other side. So we're really gonna be focusing on working any kind of asymmetrical problems out that way too. So if you feel like one side is a bit weaker, introduce some unilateral work in your workouts, and it's gonna really help bring your weaker side up, because you're gonna be including maybe a little extra reps in there, a little heavier weight, maybe an extra set in there to bring that weaker body side or that weaker part up. My shoulders don't have any weak points, so I'm just gonna be going through it normally, and then go right into the superset. Never go too heavy, obviously, especially in an isolation exercise, because you really want to keep that strict form, but you also don't want to put too much stress and pressure in that shoulder joint. So it's always good to take it a little bit lighter, really feel that contraction, feel that motion, and go from there. So we're only gonna do 3 sets of this particular superset, and then we're gonna move on from there. So 2 more sets. Get a little break though. About a 60-second, 90-second rest time. Get the breath back, let the body kind of flush it out a little bit, and also let the heart pump a little extra blood into the muscles that you're working, because that's bringing in the oxygen and nutrients. So it's very important, the pump. Usually a lot of lifters will brag about. There's no other feeling like it in the world. I mean, it's better than sex. Or maybe not, but it's up there. So as you can tell, we're doing some front raises, but not the typical front raise where you have a pronated grip, the palms facing down. It's a supinated grip, palms are facing up. So it changes it up a little bit. You're gonna get a bit more activation in the clavicular portion of the chest due to that positioning of the grip, but it's also opening up the shoulder joint a bit more. So if you notice here, if you rotate to the palms facing down, you can close up that joint a little bit, put a little bit pressure on that ligament in there. But if you rotate the other way, it's gonna help open it up, you leave a little bit of that tension, get a bit more activation in there. And I wanna really try to work on this portion through my chest and anterior portion of my shoulder too, to try to fill it out a little bit more. I run a bit heavier on my lower portion of my chest, the kind of sternocostal, that pectoralis major. So I'm fine with that, but try to develop the upper chest, which tends to always lag behind anyways, because it's a smaller muscle group, sometimes harder to develop, especially for some people like me that's not genetically blessed in that way. But like we said in the beginning, man, it's always changing the angles up to make sure you're hitting it properly and it feels good. So we're just keeping it pretty, you know, since it's in isolation, we're just keeping it with 3 sets on this one. 10 reps, 10, 12 reps. So yeah, now I'm just gonna stare at myself in the mirror and do some flexing. Shoulder elevation. Elevating those shoulders, imagining that you're bringing the shoulders up to the ears. Slight bend in the elbows there, really getting that full contraction in the upper trapezius area. And you feel that burn, it feels good. You go really heavy on this because as you can see, it's a very short range of motion, but you know, there's really no better exercise to help isolate the traps. And like I was saying before, the traps are really good. You know, it's a big muscle group actually. There's the upper, the mid, and the lower traps. And really try to work them all because that's really gonna help with a lot of different movements, and for shoulders, help stabilize the joint. Not only any kind of like overhead pressing, but also kind of bench pressing, or even rows for that matter. So really try to strengthen those traps up and change up the angles too. Right now, we're just doing a simple shoulder elevation here, but you can also do the shoulder retraction to help with the mid and lower traps to make sure you're always having the balance in the muscle. And hard thing is if you overdevelop, of course, you can be getting pulled in other directions. So really always try to include all these different angles and pinpoint the weak spots, so that way you can program around it and work out accordingly to what you need to develop and strengthen. So we got 2 more sets of this, 10 reps. We're gonna call it good.